In 1503, Cesare Borgia needed to eliminate his enemies without getting his hands dirty. He didn't order, he didn't threaten, he didn't force anything. Instead, he planted a single idea in each target's mind. 3 months later, his own enemies were literally killing each other, convinced it was the smartest decision they'd ever made. The most disturbing part? Each one died without realizing who had planted that idea in them. Have you ever tried to convince someone important and hit a wall of resistance? Today you'll learn the 3-master influence system to make anyone choose exactly what you want. There's a brutal difference between those who command and those who are obeyed. Those who command shout, demand, force. Those who are obeyed whisper, suggest, plant, and the person runs off to do exactly what they wanted, thinking it was their own brilliant decision. What you just saw isn't theory. It's what Machiavelli observed in 16th century Italian courts, where a direct command was a sign of weakness. The truly powerful never asked for anything directly. They created situations where people naturally reached the right conclusion. In chapter 18 of The Prince, Machiavelli describes something he calls necessary dissimulation. It's not lying. It's presenting reality from a specific angle, so the person sees exactly what you want them to see. Like when you want someone to leave a meeting, but instead of asking directly, you simply look at your watch and comment, "Wow, how time flies when the conversation is good." The person leaves, alone, convinced they were being polite and punctual. But here's the problem, most people do exactly the opposite. They believe being direct is being honest. That asking clearly is being transparent. And then they get frustrated when they encounter resistance, when people make faces, when nobody cooperates spontaneously. You've probably been through this, asked for something important from your boss, your partner, a close friend, and even though it was reasonable, something that would even benefit them, you felt that invisible resistance, that hesitation, that "I'll think about it," that means no, but I don't want to fight right now. It's natural to get irritated by this. After all, why can't people simply hear a good idea and accept it? Why does everything have to be a negotiation, an argument, an emotional tug-of-war? The answer lies in the most primitive human nature. Nobody likes feeling controlled. Even when the suggestion is good, even when it will benefit them, simply perceiving that someone is trying to influence them triggers an automatic defense system. It's like the brain screams, "Hey, someone's trying to tell me what to do. I'll resist on principle." Machiavelli realized this studying how Cesare Borgia eliminated political rivals. Borgia never declared war directly. Instead, he created situations where his enemies ended up fighting each other. He spread specific rumors, made strategic alliances, rewarded certain people at the right time, and then watched his adversaries destroy themselves, convinced they were acting of their own free will. It was psychological theater, and it worked because it touched on an uncomfortable truth about how we make decisions. We think we're rational, but we're actually predictable. We think we choose freely, but we really react to the stimuli we receive. The question is, if this is true, if people really are influenceable this way, why don't you learn to do it right? Why keep hitting walls when you can flow with elegance? Why keep being rejected when you can be irresistible? But Machiavelli wasn't the only one to master this art. He had 2 colleagues of genius, separated by centuries and continents, who discovered even more sophisticated versions of this same truth. One transformed influence into a Baroque art form. The other found the secret of effortless persuasion, using principles that seem almost mystical, but are deeply practical. Gracián saw human relations as a chess game, where the best moves are the ones your opponent can't see. He grew up in 17th century Spanish courts, where an etiquette mistake could cost your life. There he observed something fascinating. The most influential people never seemed to be trying to influence anyone. It was as if they had discovered a secret code of human nature. Imagine this scene. You're in a meeting and want them to decide on your proposal. Most people would make a presentation, defend arguments, try to convince. But someone who understands Gracián would do differently. They would ask questions that would lead others to reach, alone, exactly the conclusion they wanted. What do you think would happen if we tried approach X? What would be the biggest risk of not acting soon? Don't you feel we're wasting time with superficial solutions? 5 minutes later, someone at the table suggests exactly the proposal they wanted, and everyone agrees, enthusiastically, as if they had just discovered the perfect solution. Gracián called this letting others be the authors of what you desire. It's one of the most powerful maxims from The Art of Worldly Wisdom, which he published in 1647. The idea is simple but revolutionary. People love their own ideas and hate others' ideas, even when they're identical. So instead of presenting your idea as yours, You present it as a possibility, a question, a reflection, and let the person get there alone. It works because it touches a fundamental human need, the need to feel intelligent, autonomous, capable. When someone discovers a solution on their own, they're not just accepting an idea, they're validating their own ability to think. It's a much deeper pleasure than simply agreeing with someone else, but there's one mistake that can destroy everything: seeming too obvious. If your questions sound like a primer, if it becomes clear you're guiding the conversation, the spell breaks. The person realizes they've been manipulated and reacts with even more resistance. Gracián knew this. That's why he insisted on an idea he called prudent dissimulation. It wasn't falsehood or dishonesty. It was the art of presenting your true intentions so elegantly that nobody felt pressured or controlled. It's like the difference between pushing someone in a direction and putting up a sign pointing to an interesting path. In the first case, the person resists. In the second, they choose to follow out of their own curiosity. Think of a situation where you want someone to change behavior. Maybe a colleague who's always late, a partner who doesn't share tasks, a friend who complains too much. The instinct is to point out the problem directly. You always do this. You should do that. You need to change. The result? Immediate defense, justifications, counterattacks. Now imagine using Gracián's approach. Instead of accusing or suggesting, you create a conversation where the person naturally reflects on their own behavior. Have you noticed how some people manage to be punctual without seeming stressed? What do you think is the secret of couples that work well together? Why do you think some people complain about life, while others always find the bright side? The person starts thinking, and thinking, they reach their own conclusions about what needs to change. Not because you said so, but because they discovered it. Gracián mastered this art because he understood that the human ego is, at the same time, our most powerful engine and our most dangerous trap. When you feed someone's ego, making them feel intelligent and autonomous, they're on your side. When you threaten the ego, even unintentionally, they become your enemy. That's the secret behind all lasting influence, making the person feel more intelligent, more important, more capable after agreeing with you than before meeting you. They leave the conversation thinking, what an incredible discovery I had, instead of, someone convinced me of something. The difference may seem subtle, but it's the line that separates those who have real influence from those who only get temporary obedience through pressure. Gracián understood minds, but there was a philosopher on the other side of the world who discovered something even deeper: how to influence without seeming to exist. Imagine you need a stubborn person to change their mind about something important. They've already said no 3 times, already shown themselves inflexible. What would be your first reaction? Probably insist more, bring stronger arguments, maybe even raise your voice. It's natural instinct. When we encounter resistance, we apply more force. Lao Tzu would do exactly the opposite. 2,500 years ago, this Chinese philosopher was observing how water shaped mountains, how something so soft, so apparently fragile, managed to sculpt rocks that resist hammers and explosives. The answer changed his understanding of power forever. Water doesn't fight the stone. It finds the path of least resistance, goes around obstacles, fills empty spaces, and drop by drop, without haste or violence, reshapes landscapes that have stood for millennia. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu calls this Wu Wei, action through non-action. It doesn't mean passivity or laziness. It means influencing without forcing, winning without fighting, leading without commanding. Applied to human relations, this translates to a disturbing truth. People's resistance isn't an obstacle to your goal. It's information about which path to follow. When someone says no to your proposal, the normal reaction is to try to break that resistance. But Lao Tzu would ask, why are they resisting? What is this resistance protecting? What need isn't being met? And then, instead of attacking the resistance, he would use it as an ally. Say you want your boss to approve a promotion, but they always change the subject when you bring up the topic. The traditional approach would be to insist, schedule formal meetings, prepare irrefutable arguments. Lao Tzu's approach would be different. First, understand what makes them avoid the conversation. Maybe they're afraid of creating precedents. Maybe they're insecure about the budget. Maybe they feel other people will complain. Maybe they simply don't like conversations about money. Once you understand the true source of resistance, you can work with it, not against it. If they fear precedents, you frame your promotion as a unique situation. If they're worried about budget, you show how your new position will generate savings. If they fear complaints, you anticipate how to communicate the decision in a way that seems fair to everyone. You're not changing your goal, you're changing the route to get there. Lao Tzu called this winning without competing. It's like teaching someone to ride a bike. You don't push the person forward until they accelerate. You hold them until they find their own balance, and then simply let go. There's a subtle but revolutionary difference between making someone accept your idea and making someone want your idea. In the first case, you win a battle, but create resentment that will sabotage execution. In the second case, you gain an ally who will defend your proposal as if it were theirs. That's the difference between temporary power and lasting influence, between forced obedience and genuine collaboration. The most fascinating thing is that Lao Tzu discovered this by observing nature, not studying politics or psychology. He simply noticed that the most powerful forces in the universe, gravity, magnetism, plant growth, never seem to be trying. They act according to natural principles, and the result is inevitable. When you stop fighting human nature and start working with it, your interactions become almost magical. People do what you want, but genuinely want to do it. They change their minds, but feel it was a natural evolution of their own thinking. Now you have the three pillars: Machiavelli's strategy, Gracián's elegance, and Lao Tzu's fluidity. But how do you put it all together into a formula that works in the real world? Stop trying to convince. Start seducing minds. That's the synthesis of the three masters you just met, each discovered in their own way that real influence isn't about winning debates. It's about creating conditions where the person naturally arrives where you want them to arrive. Here's the complete system in action. First step, Machiavelli. Identify what the person really wants. Not what they say they want, but what their actions reveal. Every human decision is driven by a need. Recognition, security, pleasure, power, belonging. Discover which one is theirs. Second step, Gracián. Connect your goal to their goal, not through arguments, but through questions that make them realize alone how the two things align. How do you think we could solve this in a way that benefits everyone? What would be ideal in a situation like this? Third step, Lao Tzu. Remove all unnecessary resistance. If they're hesitant, don't pressure, give time. If they're confused, simplify. If they're afraid, bring security. Treat each objection as valuable information about how to adjust your approach. It works because you're no longer trying to impose your will on another person. You're creating a situation where your wills naturally align. Let's test this now. Think of a specific person you'd like to influence, someone who usually resists your suggestions. Apply the 3 steps. What's their true motivation? What question could you ask for them to reach alone the conclusion you want? What resistance do you need to remove to make the path more fluid? The difference will be immediate. Instead of feeling like you're trying to convince someone, you'll feel like you're simply helping the person discover what's best for them. And when someone feels that, resistance disappears. This isn't manipulation, it's leadership. Manipulation is when you want something that hurts the other person. Leadership is when you get them to want something that benefits you both. The 3 masters understood that true power doesn't come from making people obey against their will. It comes from making them want to obey. And when someone wants to do something, they don't just do it. They do it well, with enthusiasm, and even thank you for the opportunity. Which of these techniques do you most want to test? Comment which one caught your attention most. If you made it this far, it's because you understand that influence is a skill that can completely change your personal and professional relationships. Click on the video on screen. You'll discover even more advanced Machiavelli techniques to have power and respect even without position or formal authority. Click now on the video on screen